Today, I thought I would do a Labor Day sale checklist. When you have a good Labor Day, you just kind of breeze into Q3 and Q4, and it gives you something to build off of. The key to really good short form content is these are really easy to produce and they work really well. A nice iteration of this sort of text-only repeating ad style is if you have really good photography, but you can't add text to it or use it in an ad, you haven't really done the job. Don't send people, especially net new traffic during a sale period, to really broad website experiences. I love working with Pilot House because while we are a performance marketing agency, we really pride ourselves on caring so much about brand and creative. At Pilot House, we don't just make ads, we craft them. Every edit, every word, every scroll-stopping detail is built with purpose and care, and I truly believe that care drives creativity and creativity drives results. Our attention to both scale and brand allows us to craft strategies that deliver you short-term results while making you long-term successful, which is so important for any DTC brand. If you are curious about learning more about working with Pilot House, you can fill out a lead form at pilothouse.co and let them know you want to go on a brand new ad venture. You don't actually have to say that. You don't have to make a pun. I'm not going to force you to make a pun. Just fill out the lead form. We'd love to chat with you. Hi, welcome back to Adventurous, the podcast produced by DTC and hosted by me, Aves. Today, I thought I would do a super speedy, but also hopefully very helpful episode and do kind of a Labor Day sale checklist for you guys. Wanted to kind of explore all of the things from a content point of view that you should have prepared going into Labor Day, and hopefully have a few things that will spark some new exciting ideas to make really fun, creative, that will get you the attention, eyeballs, and conversions to really kick off Labor Day in a good way. I think that for me personally, if a Labor Day sale doesn't go well, I do get a little bit nervous heading into the rest of Q3 and Q4. So it really feels like it almost sets the tone for what your kind of heavy promo period is going to be like. A couple months ago, we talked about Memorial Day being a really good testing ground, thinking about Q4, testing different offer structures and testing just sort of different strategic approaches to promos. But yeah, I thought today would be great to really dive into some content ideas with you guys and some different styles I personally love, is to really just set you up for the best Labor Day possible. Because like I said, it feels like when you have a good Labor Day, you just kind of breeze into Q3 and Q4, and it gives you something to build off of. So you don't feel like you're playing catch up, but if you kind of exceed and bust through targets on Labor Day, it just makes the rest of Q3 and Q4 feel easy breezy. You know what? Actually check in with me again in the middle of Q3 and Q4. It probably won't feel easy breezy, but I feel more confident, which is always a good thing, I think. Especially on the creative side of things, if you feel more confident, you're just going to do more creative, cooler, fun work. So yeah, I think we should just get into it. I think that sale content in general is a really interesting topic to me because for some brands, I would say if you're sitting kind of sub 5 mil with really limited brand reach, sale ads and putting a lot of effort into sale creative that aren't going to run for a long time, it can feel like a bit of a waste of time, which I definitely I see that is valid. But I think that people these days are really naive about how sales can be positioned to help with overall brand reach. We talked about this a little bit in the Memorial Day episode, so you can go back and listen to that. But have fun with the way that you position your sale. Just putting things on sale for 25% off is not that interesting or enticing, and that's the type of content that does really just resonate with middle and bottom of funnel. It's that extra little push to get someone to buy. But if you can kind of formulate the positioning of your sale around your brand itself, it can be really fun and really exciting, and like I said, a really good way to reach new audiences and new people. I think that if we're all being really honest, a lot of price-focused content that we see in an evergreen way comes from, these big retailers like Temu or Shein, where the product isn't actually that good. So leading with price, I think sometimes for brands feels like you're almost bucketing yourself into the Temus and Sheins of the world. But realistically, that's not the case. I don't think we're all together in this sort of weird economic state that we currently exist in. And so I think it's really important to be conscious that people this year heading into Q3 and Q4, we are going to see people be a bit more price sensitive and a bit more reserved with their spending. So nowadays, price really does matter. It's very important to folks. And so I think, again, having really good, strong sale creative that isn't just slop or lazy kind of lo-fi stuff, having really good sale creative and really good sale positioning can help you unlock those new audiences, like I said, but not sacrifice your brand, which is, again, what I see a lot of those sort of smaller brands who don't quite have the brand recognition of the bigger guys yet, kind of the fear that comes up. But I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. If you really don't want to run a ton of sale content, you don't have to, but I do think this year in particular, you will be left behind a little bit. You're leaving some money on the table. So let's just get into it. Let's chat some really fun, exciting content ideas that I think everyone should prep and have on deck for Labor Day and beyond. I'm going to start with, I'm being very self-referential in this episode, which I feel like happens after you've had a podcast for a few months. But I recently also did an episode about the differences between creator content. So UGC being user-generated content, CGC, creator-generated content, and EGC, which is employee-generated content. So let's start there. It's a really simple place to start. And I think oftentimes the highest yield as well. So those three types of sort of creator, mostly video content, you really want to make sure that you account for going into Labor Day. First of all, UGC, this one's kind of the most boring. It's really difficult to source. It just sort of happens naturally. So I think what you should be looking at is, do you have UGC that performs well in an evergreen way, sort of week over week, those like classic top performers in ads? I audit a lot of brands working at Pilot House, and you often see this. There's like a video of a customer from 4 years ago that's just been working and trucking along like a cute little train ever since. So look at those top performers and take like 5 minutes out of your day to simply throw in some sale related overlay to those top performing videos. It does make a difference. Having the kind of sale content as a badge or just like a consistent overlay throughout the video, I have seen it directly bolster click-through rates when we are in promotional periods with brands. So don't be lazy, kids. It's really easy. Take content that's already winning in that UGC category, slap sale information on it in any way that sort of fits your brand, and then just run it for the duration of the sale. It's like the lowest lift. Like I said, don't be lazy. It takes me like 5 minutes to do in whatever video editing program I'm using that day. It's so simple. That might just be the, I guess, like Gen Z and me that grew up making movies in iMovie, but yeah, it's the lowest lift. Surely someone on your team can do it very quickly. So take all those top performers, slap the sale info on it, and yeah, run them. And really monitor as well click-through rate on those and see if it is worth it for your brand, because every brand's different. Every brand's a little special snowflake. So make sure that it actually does work, because that's really important data for you going into the rest of this heavy promo period of the year. Next category within this kind of creator content, like I mentioned, is CGC, which is creator-generated content. So when we are deploying actual creators, paying them to make content for our brands. This one is a little bit trickier. Maybe tricky is not the word, but it's different when we're approaching sales specific. So I have personally never seen, unless you are like a Temu, sales specific creator content really make a lot of sense for an account. There's a lot that should go into producing creator generated content. It should be thoughtful. You should think about the way that you're shooting things, think about the creator you're using, the script. All of that takes a lot of effort and bandwidth. So I just don't see it really being worth it to employ a creator to kind of go over what the sale details are and show their product. Most people also know that this type of content, creator-generated content, is not authentic nowadays. So having someone go on camera and say, I shopped the sale, I got these items, it usually just doesn't land as we hope it would. But that's not to say that creator-generated content has no place in sale content. What I tend to do is I start going to creators who I know their content works, I know that they really resonate with the brand, and then I get them to make a ton of B-roll during this period of time, so leading up to Labor Day, and keeping in mind I'm probably going to use it again throughout different sales. And when I'm talking about B-roll, I'm talking about like no voiceover, just product-focused video shots from these creators. Unless we're, again, talking about like a brand like Temu, or if you're running a lot on TikTok Shop or AppLovin, those are platforms where I've seen like creator sale content really work. But that's also evergreen creative sale content, which makes no sense to say, but it's just sort of like a generic offer that we're only running on AppLovin. So that type of creator content where they're saying, shop now, you've got a special deal, you'll save 20% off. That tends to work really well. But like I said, it's so platform specific and so brand specific that it's not really worth going after that unless you are doing numbers on TikTok Shop or AppLovin. But back to this sort of concept of using creators to generate a ton of B-roll for you to play with, you really do get the most bang for your buck, I think, taking this route with creator-generated content over sale periods. I've talked a lot on different podcasts about short form video content and how dominant it's been on platforms over the past 1 to 2 years. I wouldn't blame you at all if you have tuned me out while I am talking about short form video content, because I have talked about it a lot. But maybe we've got some new folks and maybe you want to tune in this time. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a refresher on what I mean when I say short form video content, especially as it pertains to creator generated B-roll. So I think the key to really good short form content is to find a way to show off your top USPs in a way that's visually exciting. And that sounds like very simple. And like most things in life, the simpler things are actually more difficult to execute. So what I mean by taking your top USPs and making sure that you're visually representing them in a way that's exciting is not like, who is the coolest influencer I can find for this? It's not, what is the coolest way I can edit this? For example, if you are selling phone cases, I'd start a brainstorm by sort of drawing out a spectrum. And so what is the sort of plainest way to show the phone case USP? It's taking a phone with no case on it and putting a case on it, therefore providing protection to the phone. But the most sort of outlandish and exciting way you could maybe display the USP, which is that it will protect your phone, is like jumping in a helicopter and throwing the phone out of the helicopter. And I don't think a lot of us have helicopter B-roll money lying around, which is really fair. I also think that there's something to be said when we go to the other side of the spectrum, from the most boring way to represent something to the most outlandish way to represent something. That really extreme version is probably not actually going to sell the product. It might work really well top of funnel as like a stunt that you do, but what's actually going to be your perfect B-roll visual is kind of somewhere in the middle. So like I said, start the brainstorm by physically drawing out a spectrum. I do this all the time. It's very fun. I do it on my iPad. I feel like I've been catching a lot of heat from coworkers about how much I talk about my iPad on here, but I love my iPad. So on my iPad, I will start with a spectrum. I'll go boring, putting phone case on phone, outlandish, throwing it out of a helicopter. And then I'll just talk myself through the steps to get to the middle. I start by sort of backtracking from helicopter, and it can be like, okay, if I'm not going to be up in a helicopter, then maybe throwing it out the window is going to be the next most exciting thing. And then I just sort of walk, like I said, backwards from there until I find something that feels right. It feels realistic. It feels funny. It feels like it's going to be repurposed in a ton of different ways. So really give yourself kind of that space and set the stage in that way where it's like boring to nuts, find something in the middle, because 9 times out of 10, that middle thing is going to be what works the best for you. I've talked about this a lot. I promised myself I wasn't going to yap so much about short form video content, but I just think it's so important to really nail this, and it really sets you up for some easy success. But also really thinking about how you can sort of reuse this content again and again. Very important. And like I said, short form, it should be about 5 seconds. So you want to find ways that are exciting, but not totally crazy, to show the USPs that matter to your customers visually without any text in under 5 seconds. I'm not pretending that that is a super easy thing to do. It is quite difficult, but like I said, if you have an iPad, start it on your iPad, do the spectrum trick. It works really well for me, and it just helps get my brain moving a little bit in this way that doesn't feel like it's wasting time. Okay, that is enough about short form video content for now. I'll probably do another deep dive episode into it because, again, it's so important for your brand to really nail short form video content right now and to be able to show up on real stories. Like, most dominant platforms have some kind of short form video content. It's important. Okay, I'm holding myself back, but it's very important. I'm going to move on to employee generated content, which is the last sort of bucket in this creator content type checklist that we're going to run through. So I honestly think that being shy is very pre-iOS 14. You need to get in front of the camera. People want to see you, they want to get to know you, and that's how a lot of brands are building that brand affinity nowadays. So if you're not producing employee-generated content, you are kind of missing the boat for relevancy. So if you really want to get serious about building that brand presence, I'd really consider, again, as a founder, stepping in front of the camera from time to time, or finding someone who works on your team who's just kind of yappy and likes the product and would love this sort of special project. I think that what's so unique and special and cool about employee-generated content is that you can turn things around very quickly, which is really important. I saw this last year in the brands that I worked directly with over Black Friday, but the ability to be agile in the way that we produced content really made or broke a brand's ability to succeed and smash targets last year. So I bet it's going to be the same this year, and a little bit more exaggerated, where we're going to need to see more actual net new stuff flowing through these ad accounts. So all of that is to say that employee generated content is really important to just start thinking about if you're not doing it now. Thinking about where in your warehouse, if you've got a warehouse you can film, where in the office you can film, really prioritizing this in the next couple months. Like I said, because it lives with you, you're able to concept, film, and launch something within a day, which is really special compared to, negotiations, going back and forth with creators. I even have creators that, we've got great relationships with, but it still takes time because it's not in-house. So really making sure that you find someone or yourself who can create this employee-generated content. There's not a lot that I can give you in terms of advice in what will work, except for what hopefully your parents said to you, which is be yourself. That is like the number one tip for employee generated content succeeding. I think that authenticity is particularly important with this type of content. So really figuring out what makes the brand really wacky and fun and what draws people to the founder story, and then representing that through this employee generated content. So that is the first part of the checklist. You want to make sure that you've got UGC, and that can be really simple. We're just slapping text overlays on things that already work. You want to make sure you have good CGC, creator-generated content, which should kind of come in this short-form B-roll type of fashion for sales-specific usage. And then finally, employee-generated content, EGC, which you really want to make sure that you're just prioritizing in your workflow and making sure that you carve out a bit of time for it, and you know where you want to film, what you want to capture, and you've got someone sort of assigned to this duty going into Q3, Q4. Next, I want to talk to you guys about static content. So static content, meaning a lot of post-production and just sort of simple basics that should live in your mind anyway, but in case you've forgotten any of these styles, I will remind you now. One of my favorite forms of static content for promos specifically is text only. It's so simple and easy to produce, and there's lots of different ways you can do text only ads. Some really common formats these days are like the repeating text that we've all seen 100 times. They're very oversaturated, but they do work pretty nicely. And if you're kind of pressed for time and you're like a Canva baddie who's just going about producing content on their own, hey, I've been there. It is a tough fight. And these are really easy to produce and they work really well. So just nice, easy, repeating text. Make it bold. Make sure that you include all of the relevant information. So if you've got a firm end date, if there are exclusions, if it's tiered, just make sure everything is in there and it's really clear to understand. A nice iteration of this sort of text-only repeating ad style is if you're offering a really deep percentage, considering doing like a strike-through percentage list. So sometimes this is like the very common issue I have on this podcast is like talking about visual things can sometimes get confusing. So bear with me. I'm going to try to make this make sense. But what I mean by like strike through percentage is you kind of have maybe like 10, 15, 20% listed and crossed out, and then really heroing like 25% if that's what you're going with. It just kind of creates a sense of value and a sense of deep discounting, which usually motivates people to click and gets them excited. Another variation of a text-only ad that I love is a letter sort of from the founders ad, or like long form text in a text-only ad. As a girl who loves to yap and write and read and just wants words always flowing through her brain and in her orbit, these ads are really fun for me personally to produce. I think that they really only work if you're the kind of brand who can be funny. Like a really serious long form text ad is kind of weird, but I think what's really fun about them is it looks quite serious and like an announcement, but you can make it really funny and just kind of call out the promo. I believe last year I produced text-only ads that were written from the point of view of Santa Claus, and that was maybe the best day of my life writing that copy. So consider it. It's fun. There's different ways you can do it, but from the founder is always good and really easy. Another trend I've seen for text-only ads that has worked across some of our accounts is sort of like a faux we're closing up shop. I do think this gag is kind of over and people aren't going to be as interested in them, but you know, the headline within the creative is like, we're saying goodbye, and the subheadline is like, to these fan favorite styles because they're going to sell so fast. I do think those had like a very strong moment in the summer, but they're kind of, you know, the jig is up, as they say. They're figuring us out. They know all our marketing tips and tricks. So that one could be worth a try if you haven't done it yet. But yeah, like I said, that repeating text style, it's so simple to produce and I see it work really consistently, and it's worth kind of adding to the rotation and writing on your checklist as you're prepping for Labor Day this year. Next on the list is product-focused overlays. Do you currently have product photography that feels current? Is it cute and stylized to your brand standards? Does it feature enough negative space to add relevant sale copy? I have talked about this before as well, but I'm going to say it again because it is so important and I have so much pent-up trauma from this. If you have really good photography, but you can't add text to it or use it in an ad, you haven't really done the job, and you should always be thinking about how you will use things in ads when you are capturing photography. So much of our marketing ad spend is spent through social channels these days. It's not like it was in the Mad Men era where we were shooting for like a single billboard. You have to think about reusability, and you have to think about how things will actually look on a very tiny little screen in someone's hand. So really considering that when you are sourcing photography is really important. It's a must. Really, really, really need to shore up your product photography. I will say I'm not a very good salesperson, but I guarantee our in-studio team, they're very good at what they do, and they really do understand how to balance sort of brand and usability. So if you don't have this type of content yet, reach out. We can book an audit, look through what you have, chat, and see what we can do for you, because we do have a fully functioning in-house studio at Pilot House. And the really cool thing is, in case you can tell by how much I yap about it, we love performance marketing. So we make sure that performance marketing needs are going to be met when we are capturing photography. So just a little shout out, reach out if you don't have adequate product photography for usage and sales and beyond. Really helpful. And again, it's one of those types of content that is really easy to produce. So if you are running on a lower budget and you're just pumping things out through Canva yourself, or you've just got a small team and only so many deliverables, it's a really standard style, but it does work really well. So like I said, just trying to protect your time and trying to protect your efforts, really important when you're considering what kind of photography you actually already have. Finally, on the sort of static side of things, I want to talk about scrappy, very lo-fi static content. So things like those post-it note ads, which I personally hate. I don't think that they do that great, and they also don't really build a brand. They're not very interesting. I don't like them. But there are a ton of other really fantastic, sort of scrappier, lo-fi styles that are really fun to experiment with. Lately, personally, with one of our sort of higher scale brands, I've been working on building ads that feel like a single cell of a comic strip. It's been like creatively kind of challenging, and I've been trying to produce them sort of at scale, and it's been really fun, and they do work pretty well. And just sort of riffing on this trend of really underproduced content, but I wanted to make our variations stand out a little bit more. So like I said, I try to approach it as like a single cell comic strip where I need to come up with really exciting, stimulating visuals, but also tell a story with like 2-3 lines of copy. I keep referencing specifically on this episode that I do like to yap. I like to talk a lot. So that, like I said, it has been a little bit challenging to really tell a story and really land a joke in a single cell, but it's really fun. It's really exciting. And like I said, they have been working really well. I think the trick to lo-fi content in general, whether it's the post-it notes, hate them, or something else, the trick is that you don't want users to feel like you're trying to be chill and just like a regular person and relatable and approachable. Something that I've always really taken to heart is that nobody wants to see someone trying to emulate something. We just want to see someone who is cool, chill, and approachable, if that makes sense. So a thing to consider here is how sort of scammy you might look running this lo-fi content like the post-it notes if you have really limited brand recognition. So this is kind of circling back to what I was saying at the intro. When we're a smaller brand, sometimes it does feel a little nerve-wracking to be producing a lot of sale-focused content and running that at the top of funnel. Do you want to introduce yourself as a discount brand is something that I hear a lot from those sort of smaller brands. Do I want to lead with price stuff? It feels so sort of against everything that we've been taught. But like I said, we're moving into a different period where it is important to utilize sales and promos to reach those new audiences. So this is a really good checkpoint to just say, hey, maybe if we haven't built the brand recognition that we really want to, we shouldn't be running ads that look like some kind of scam or they look like Temu ads. And it's all about just how intentional you're being when you're creating them. I think something like what I was saying, kind of illustrated based, almost like a comic strip, a little bit rough around the edges. There's still a lot of effort being put into that style of content. So just considering again how things will play if you don't have a lot of brand recognition, and if you're gonna, I don't know, drop ship fake Labubus and you don't really care about your brand, go for it. Do all the post-it note ads that your hand can write, do anything crazy. I think for bigger brands as well with brand recognition, it is fun to go really scrappy because it creates a bit of tension. And tension is something that's really interesting right now in marketing to me. I'm going to do a really deep dive on what it means to create tension through your content in a couple of weeks. But I do want to say that what works about, say, like, all that's coming to mind is Wendy's, like the restaurant. If Wendy's does something that's very like they made it in paint in 2 seconds, it doesn't look good, there is tension in that innately because Wendy's, we know, is a really big corporation. They make really good fries. I do really prefer Wendy's fries. Kind of getting on a tangent thinking about it. But yeah, Wendy's is a big corporation. We know that they're established. So when they do something that feels like borderline scammy or like they put no effort into it, what actually captures people's attention is that creates tension because it's weird. It's the same if like Apple did it or Diptyque. I have been using Diptyque, by the way, as an example because I have diptyque candles on my desk, so I'd look over and see them and use them as an example. But anyway, that creates tension, right? Because that's not the brand that we're familiar with. So it's interesting because that's not what we're expecting, but they have that brand recognition and that familiarity that the tension exists. But if you're just sort of, again, very small, you're just starting out, you don't have that brand recognition, those same tactics aren't going to work the same for you because you're not creating that tension, and that tension is what actually drives the eyeballs and attention. So like I said, we're going to talk more about tension in a future episode because I think it's really interesting and exciting, and I love when I get to talk about psychology and how it plays into marketing. But for now, for the sake of this quote unquote short episode that's just a quick checklist on what you should prep for Labor Day, tension only can exist if you're a big brand and you produce those really lo-fi, weird, scrappy styles. It won't exist for you if people don't know who you are. So just something to consider. I think I also am a big proponent of just being weird and doing what you want and what feels right for your brand. So if you are a smaller brand and those kind of Post-it notes or anything else that fits into that category of being really lo-fi, if that is your brand, that's really fun. I love it. I'd love to work with you. Reach out. But yeah, just go for what feels right. And make sure, again, that if you do want to get to a place where your brand is taken seriously and you've got that recognition, maybe just stay away from these and go with some of the other styles we've mentioned. Before we wrap things up, I did want to talk a little bit about post-click and landing pages because it is especially important when we start looking at bringing in net new customers through promo creative. I'm only going to speak to what I really know here, which is very little compared to our fully stacked CRO team at Pilot House. So I'm going to particularly talk about landing pages. I'm not going to talk about any sort of back-end Shopify work or anything like that. Let's just talk about landing pages because that is sort of where my expertise lives and dies. But landing pages during promo periods are particularly important because, like I said, when we're reaching new audiences with sale creative, that is great and it's going to drive, most likely, some pretty exciting, cool, fun click-through rates for you. So really paying attention to where we're sending that traffic becomes much more important than it does in a regular setting. Number one, we are asking people to purchase something that they maybe kind of just found out about in a much shorter consideration period. So usually if your product is on the higher AOV side, meaning it's just a little bit more expensive, you expect there to be a consideration period. You make plans for that. You grab an email, you follow up. It's all fine and dandy. No rush. Buy it when you want. But when we're talking about a promo period, there is inherently a bit of a rush there, right? The promo period's only going to last so long, and we want to make sure that as many people are actually purchasing as possible. I've definitely done this where it's like you see something on sale, you think about it, you hum and you haw, you don't buy it, and then you probably never actually go back and buy it because why would you buy it full price if you'd seen it on sale? So that can happen. I do suffer, I think, deeply from choice paralysis, and I know a lot of users do as well. I'm looking at heat maps, I'm looking at landing page behavior. Personally, do not let me browse your website if I'm a new customer during a sale period because I will abandon my cart, like I said. But landing pages are really helpful because they can help steer your net new customers towards hero products and help make sure that we're actually seeing those conversions from the elevated click-through rates that we're driving during promo periods. So, like I mentioned before, if you're higher AOV, product's a little bit more expensive, you're used to those longer consideration windows, start thinking about how you can address every piece of friction on one landing page. I have made some unhinged landing pages in my life that have worked for years. And I did that because I was maybe a little bit green, admittedly, and I thought that people would read a lot more than they actually do. But I also did it because, working with those longer consideration products, I was really sensitive to how long it would actually take someone to make that purchasing decision. And I really thought deeply about how do I acknowledge and then bust any fears that they have around purchasing this in the same day that they've seen it, or almost immediately in the same day. So something that I really like to play around with, again, is thinking about what works for net new customers in an evergreen period, and then just trying to shove all of that into a single landing page, it does sound a little bit crazy, but a really, I think, easy to explain application of what I'm saying here is if you are running a lot of like static sale content that's text only stuff and people are coming for my fake mug company that I always love to reference. Say you've got a hero mug, you know that that is kind of the main acquisition product that people come in for, is what you're famous for. You're going to want to create landing pages that, like I said, take everything that people love to interact with on a typical customer journey about that mug and just shove it into one page experience. So I love including top performing either organic social videos or ad content. So specifically like creator content that works really well. If that's not the ad they came in on, let's show them that ad almost immediately on the landing page. Especially, I think I've mentioned this before, it is really important that you are optimizing your landing pages for mobile traffic versus desktop traffic. Majority of traffic is going to be mobile, so think really deeply about what people are actually landing on after the ad. I love to sometimes add, this is really cheeky, and now I feel like a big nerd for saying that it's cheeky, but I love to add a top performing piece of like creator video content above the fold, which just means kind of immediately in the hero section. I find that it works really well. And like I said, if I have something that's working really well, I already know that this ad in evergreen settings will convert people. Best believe I'm going to show it to people when they're coming through on sale ads. So yeah, if you've got the capabilities to be producing landing pages, really good to think about what the complete journey will be like for people, especially net new customers during a sale period. And make sure that we're not just running people straight to the landing page or even straight to a collection page. Boo, you can't see, but I'm doing a thumbs down. Don't send people, especially again, net new traffic during a sale period, to really broad website experiences, because most likely they will get choice paralysis or they'll just get lost and they'll lose interest and they'll bounce. And then you've done all this work to create all this really fun sale content and then you got a leaky bucket. So again, really make sure that you're paying attention to where you're sending traffic, whether that is, if you don't have any landing page capabilities, just a really good PDP. Start looking at those PDPs again. Do we have all of the content that we know does drive conversions on the pre-click side? Load it up onto that PDP. Really think about it before we get into this heavy promo period, because it does help just shore up those conversions and kind of patch up that leaky bucket. But yeah, that was my Labor Day checklist. It is long, but also fun and exciting. And like I said, I think that Labor Day really sets the tone. Like Memorial Day is fun. We're trying new things. We're testing our sales structures. Everything is cool. It's the middle of the summer. Labor Day is starting to get a bit serious, isn't it? It's starting to get a little bit serious. I don't know why I'm doing the accent, but that's how serious it is. I have to do an accent. I have to do a British accent. That's how you know it's getting really real. But not to shock myself. It is, like I said, going to set up how you approach Q3 and Q4. If you absolutely knock Labor Day out of the park and you far and away exceed your targets, it gives you more room to play later on in the Q4 specifically, Black Friday specifically season. If you need to discount deeper to be more competitive, you've got budget to play with. But if you come out of Labor Day feeling really shaky and things just didn't work, it does cause a lot of panic, and panic is kind of the kryptonite of a successful Black Friday. If you don't have a plan and stick to it, you don't know what you're doing because things didn't work out very well for Labor Day, that is a scary environment that I've seen many times, and it's never very much fun. So hopefully when this comes out this week, you guys have enough time to prep some solid creative to drive results on Labor Day. And I really hope that it does go well for every single person listening, because like I said, we want to all be calm, cool, and confident heading into Q3 and Q4, because it's going to get really scary and wacky, but also really fun. So hopefully this was helpful and you got some new ideas. If you need help with anything, like I said, reach out. We are always excited to work with new clients, specifically at Pilot House in this time of year. It is a scary thing to do, but it is really fun, and we love knocking things out of the park throughout Q4. It's a really exciting time for us. So that was the episode. Again, really hope it was helpful and really wishing you all the best of luck for Labor Day this year. And if you need to run anything by us, if you want to get an audit, reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, just Aves. And yeah, we'd love to chat. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you guys next week.